Yeah, so if you go onto the website Saudi Properties, which is part of the Real Estate General Authority, who is the official regulator of the real estate market in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, they describe the geographical maps, but also what type of property rights are allowed in those areas. And that will tell you whether in your area you can own a long-term lease, freehold title, or one of the others. So generally speaking, they've preserved all property rights. So if you're a developer or a seller, in most areas you can offer either the freehold title, the ownership, what we call sak mulkiya, or you might offer a long-term leasehold interest like a sak intifa, 99-year leasehold, or usufruct right. So those bundle of rights are preserved, and that gives you the flexibility to decide what it is you want to offer as a developer and as a purchaser. If you're buying title, the freehold title, and you want to register it in your name, then it's going to be registered in two places. There'll be a register set up specifically to record foreign ownership, and that will be connected and linked to the real estate registry that will also issue the title deed. So that's one avenue. If it's a 99-year lease, the concept of sak intifa, that's also capable of registration, and so the real estate registry can issue a title for that. It should similarly be recorded on the Saudi property register for foreign ownership. If it's a long-term lease, then it might be registered on the ijara platform. So there are clear and transparent registration forms. A lease is known as ijar or ijara in Saudi, and usufruct is a intifa or manfa. It's a higher right, effectively. It gives you a broader set of rights than a lease. In a civil code jurisdiction, they've drawn upon these principles of Sharia in distinguishing between property ownership and the concept of usufruct. So usufruct, think of it as freehold, but for a limited period of time. So you have full rights to utilize, exploit, develop and extract a profit from that real estate for a period of time. Whereas with freehold, you have that right, but unlimited in time, in perpetuity. If you look at your lifetime, for example, and the benefit that you're going to derive. But from a valuation perspective, they're very different. So from a valuation perspective, a lease has a diminishing residual interest. So the residual interest in the lease decreases over time. And the less residual interest you have in the property, the less value you have to extract from that property. In a freehold environment, there's no residual. It's in perpetuity. So that value remains consistent. So it's a valuation consideration, and that impacts on the value of the property when you're buying it and when you're selling it. That's the primary difference. But in practice, after 99 years, if you own the building, you're going to have to demolish it and rebuild it. And everyone's going to have to participate in that cost. And that cost may be prohibitive. If you had a lease, that revisionary interest, what we call the revisionary interest, what's remaining would be zero and it would revert back to the freeholder. So the original landowner would take that interest. If I was the freehold owner of that apartment with everybody else, I don't lose that title. What I could then do is say, look, I can't afford it, and we get all of the other owners in the building to also say, look, we can't afford to redevelop it. Let's just sell the building to a developer. They'll demolish it and rebuild it. So that it has a residual value. Whereas in a leasehold scenario, at the end of that term, the revisionary interest goes back up to the freeholder, to the landowner, and you lose that benefit. As an individual, you'll need to get your digital ID, and you'll need to open a bank account in Saudi Arabia, and then you'll need to transact through the digital platform for purchasing real estate. At the moment, the real estate registry has a digital payment platform where you can purchase and settle payments online. As a matter of practice, it's being used for smaller transaction values, and people are more comfortable attending the office of the real estate registry with a bank check where it's large sums of money. And that remains a practice to this day, even though the platform does reference digital payment. For large sums, people do prefer to do it through the traditional bank check mechanism. But opening a bank account is very important, and the money needs to be in the kingdom to then be able to transact. The money must be in the kingdom. So as an individual, when you want to purchase real estate in Saudi Arabia, you need a digital ID. Now, as we mentioned earlier, that might be your Iqama or your premium residency number, or it might be the digital ID that you apply as a foreign investor outside the kingdom. You'll then need to open a bank account in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia with a bank in Saudi Arabia, and you'll need to get a mobile number. Now, that's very important because a lot of government services are digitized, and so you'll receive an OTP when anything transacts. And so in order to complete the transaction, you'll need an OTP to do so. So those three things: the digital ID, or your Iqama number, a bank account in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and a mobile number. So what that means in practice is the money must be in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Payments can be made through the digital platform with the real estate registry, and the real estate registry documents that and requires that. But in practice, that's being utilized for smaller transactions, the digital payment platform. And for larger transactions above 2 or 3 million riyals, people prefer to take a manager's check from a Saudi bank to the office of the real estate registry to transact and to record title in their name, as opposed to using online payment platform. If it's off plan, before title is available to you, the developer will have an escrow account that's established under the off-plan sales framework. It's illegal for a project to receive money unless it's been licensed to sell off-plan and the developer's licensed to market that property and has a sales license to sell off-plan. A condition of that is to have an escrow account. So the purchaser would pay directly into that escrow account. Every developer has to be licensed, and you can see that registration, and also you can ask them for it. In that circumstance, the money can be transferred from a bank account overseas into the escrow bank account in the kingdom. You can give a power of attorney to anybody to act on your behalf. If you're outside the kingdom, it needs to be notarized and it needs to be attested by the embassy in Saudi Arabia, in your home country, and then sent to Saudi Arabia and then certified by the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs before it's utilized. But yes, you can do that. But now most of it's being done electronically. It's being encouraged to be transacted electronically. If, for example, it's a high value transaction and you needed to turn up to the real estate registry's office to transact and to hand over the manager's check, you can appoint an official representative to act on your behalf. And that's in fact how a company operates. So if there's a company that's investing in real estate, then it would appoint a representative to do that on its behalf. To come to the question of cash is not allowed. You can't make payments by cash. Cash won't be accepted, and you can't transact on the basis of cash. It needs to be a payment from a bank account in Saudi Arabia. And that's either payment through the digital platform or by way of a manager's check issued by the bank themselves. And even if off-plan developers won't accept cash, it has to be bank transfers into their escrow account. The developer needs to undertake its own KYC to verify the source of funds. And typically the funds need to be received from the person on the sale contract itself. And if that's not the case, then there needs to be an explanation as to why. The Real Estate General Authority has within it WAFI. WAFI is the department that regulates off-plan sales. So there is a law called the Law of Off-Plan Sales and Leasing, and that deals with the licensing of a project, of a developer, the establishment of an escrow account, but also deals with what happens if there's a distress, if the developer can't proceed, can't fulfill the project. And in that situation, the rights of the purchaser are carefully protected. The escrow account can never be secured to a bank. The proceeds in the escrow account must only be used for the development of the project itself. And where a project is stalled or failed, then the Real Estate General Authority can intervene. The developer can be replaced, and a new developer can come in and take over the project. They can only collect 20%, up to 20% before construction commencement. And after that, payments are typically tied to milestones. And the milestones for construction have to be certified by the regulator, by WAFI, the off-plan regulator. They'll issue a certificate confirming that works have been completed to that level. And only then is the developer entitled to issue an invoice to its purchasers requesting the next payment. So if you receive an invoice from the developer, you say, please send me proof that that construction milestone has been achieved. That proof is not photos of the site works, which is nice to have. It's the official certificate from WAFI that the completion of that milestone has been achieved. When purchasing a property, there are a number of additional payments you'll need to make. There's the real estate transfer tax, that's 5%. And then there's a fee that's paid to the Real Estate General Authority for the purchase by a foreigner of real estate, and that's another 5%. Could be anyone that's not a Saudi national or treated as a Saudi national under the law. So there is now a 2% fee that's charged by the Real Estate General Authority on the sale of real estate by foreign investors. Now, to put that into context, there used to be an old law that said that if a foreigner owned real estate and they sold it, there was a 10% tax on the value of that real estate, 10%. And that, as a matter of practice, was sometimes imposed and enforced by the notary public, and sometimes it wasn't, because of its age and how old this regulation was. Not everyone applied it consistently. Now, there is a clear provision in the implementing regulations, as you mentioned, Article 9, that stipulates it, and it's 2%, so it's a lot less than it was before, and it applies on the sale of real estate that a foreigner owns in the kingdom. So there's no property tax per se on built real estate. Now, there is a white land tax, but that's for undeveloped land or land that has infrastructure that's not been improved and built upon. And there is a tax in Riyadh for unoccupied properties that are not being utilized. But as an individual, there isn't a land tax or a property tax like you'd expect in a Western jurisdiction. taxation that exists on built properties. No. There's no personal income tax in Saudi Arabia. And if you owned a property and you had a bank account in Saudi Arabia and a digital ID, then you could go onto the Ijab platform as landlord and lease that out. And the rent would then be paid into your bank account. As it's personal income, it's not subject to a personal income tax. But if you're a company, then it's subject to company tax, 20% for foreign companies. And for local companies that are owned by Saudi nationals, they pay zakat on that. And where a company is partly owned by Saudi and partly owned by a foreigner, the foreign component is taxed and the Saudi component pays zakat. No, so if you're a foreign developer and you're selling off-plan, so long as you're selling within the period of your off-plan sales license and you're closing on those sales within a period of 1 year following expiry of your license to sell, then there's no tax on you. There's no 2% fee that's levied on you. By purchasing property is an independent right, separate from residency. Only time it's linked is in the context of premium residency and one particular category of premium residency, which allows you to obtain premium residency visa, so permanent residency in the kingdom, if the property you purchase meets certain criteria. And so that criteria is that it's worth more than 4 million Saudi riyal, it's residential, it's completed, and it's unencumbered, never becomes encumbered with debt. So it's clear and free of debt financing, it's completed, and it's residential. If it meets that criteria, then yes, you can obtain a visa. But if it's less than that, you can still buy it as a foreigner if it's in a geographical zone, you just can't get residency, that's all. If they can't acquire premium residency through property ownership, then there are many other categories of premium residency available. Looking at special talent, there's a category for high net worth individuals that want to acquire premium residency for a fee of 800,000 Saudi riyals, and other categories as well that are open to consideration. So those may be applicable to those individuals, and they should explore that. The premium residency framework and the premium residency center are actively encouraging people to explore options for residency in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and those are things that they should look into and explore. So the 800,000 category was the original category that was first released, and it allowed certain high net worth individuals to apply for residency, and if they qualified, then they would pay an 800,000 riyal fee. That would then entitle them to unlimited residency in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Subsequent to that, they introduced different categories of premium residency, some which were temporary in nature, not unlimited, for finite periods of time. And so employees earning a certain salary and of a certain level of qualification and experience and seniority can also apply for premium residency, but it's limited in time. So there are a number of options now available, and they're not all linked to buying real estate or paying 800,000 Saudi riyal. There are more flexible frameworks as well. For example, the one for a skilled professional in certain categories and certain salaries, it's $4,000, 4,000 Saudi riyals to apply for that type of residency visa. In 2019, when the tourism visa was introduced, visa on arrival, 50 countries were included on that list. So the countries you just mentioned are all on that list, the UK, the US, and so on. So you can enter the kingdom on a tourist visa and remain for 90 days. Now, if they wanted to stay for longer, then in reality, if they had a child that was eligible to apply, let's say one of their children was a professional, one of their children was a high net worth individual or an investor, they can get premium residency because premium residency applies to parents and to dependents. They're also eligible on your application. So that would be another route that's available to them.